and welcome to Live from the Poolhouse. I am, of course, one of your hosts, TL Foster, and I am live from the Poolhouse. I am joined by the effervescent, that's probably not a word, but I'm not a wordsmith, Miss Sonya Ballantyne.
Yo. Or wait, what was the other one? Ho. That's something I should be yelling on the street, but yes.
We are doing another episode of this really great show. I do want to take the time before we get started on this episode to thank all of our Patreon supporters.
Yes, thank you.
As this is recording, we have gotten our first, we had our first, after Patreon, post, thing done, right? But it's just been really great. It's been a really great ride across the board, and we really enjoy doing this show. Really enjoy everyone that's been listening. We've had a lot of great support, and we have a lot of really cool guests coming up soon. And I don't know, it's been really fun. It's been really cool, and I have loved doing this show with Sonya. I've told her this multiple times, and this has just been really fun. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Sonya for letting me do this, and you guys letting us do this show weekly.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody. Because this has been so fun just to be able to talk to TL every week and to just go back into the show, because I probably didn't mention it in my notes, but I was dreading this episode because I thought it was, I just remember it really negatively in terms of this episode's boring. And then I ended up really, really loving it. So it's allowing me to have new perspective on something that I've seen a million times, and just the guests we've been having and being able to talk about the differences between the lived experiences and how people enjoy the show has just been fun. So thanks for the Patreon donations. Keep supporting us, and yeah, tell your friends. Maybe they'll give us a $50 donation.
Or liking and supporting us on iTunes, Spotify.
Exactly.
The more you can support, tell people about our show, the better it is. And for everybody else, and like Sonya said, we have a lot of really cool guests coming soon. Some that I'm huge fans of. So I'm just really excited, and I'm glad to be back after taking a week off and Sonya doing the last episode with her sister. So that was really cool and fun for me. So I'm back from outer space. But yeah, Sonya, what is this episode? Let's get into this episode 14.
So this week we're discussing season 1, episode 14, Day Down 1. This episode first aired December the 3rd, 1990. It was directed by Jeff Melman, and it was written by Cheryl Gard. And this episode, we enter as boys and leave as men. So this episode starts with a slumber party in Ashley's room. The girls have attempted a pranking on Hillary by putting a frog in her bed, like a pet frog. Hillary and Will come in eating frog leg soup, much to the horror of the little girls, before Will reveals Ferdinand the pet frog. And I just wanted to mention, I really love the diverse group of girls that Ashley sleep over. It was really cute, and I just like how Ashley had a black doll. That was my favorite little thing. I'm just aw, her parents are looking out for her. It was really cute.
Yeah.
Plus, I like that there was another black girl in her friend group, too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really great about this show is that they've made a very conscious effort, especially for Ashley's friends, to show, this isn't, there's not a split in kind of race, race diversity. In Will's school, it's Will and Carlton are the only black people, or really the only people of color, forget just black, Asian, Latino, at all. It's literally just Carlton and Will. And I really think showing that Ashley's generation is kind of the breaking point of that. You do see a nice mix of of African American, of white, of Asian, of Latino characters mixed in her age group. I think you're starting to see that, but Bel-Air is becoming a lot more of a diverse city than it may have been towards the beginning of the show.
Yeah, and I think it continues later in the seasons too, because Ashley's main friend group when she gets a little bit older are a black teenage girl and an Asian girl. So it's I like that they continue that little bit of diversity, like not like the social justice warrior type, like infused diversity that a lot of people are afraid of, but this idea of this little girl realistically having a diverse friend group, because like these are just girls that they're hanging out with, and I love that like of course there would be more than one black family that she knows and more than one Asian family that she knows, because it is like it would have been so easy for the show to be like yeah, like everybody is white in Bel-Air except for them. And I'm like, no, that's not the case though. Like a lot of people are rich. A lot of people of color are rich too. So like it doesn't make any sense not to include them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really cool testament to the show, and it's something like you said. It's not the woke explaining like, oh, you have to have like, no, it's just like this is what would be indicative. And I don't know, like as someone who grew up, like I was not even a tenth rich as the Banks were, but as someone like I'm from a military family, so I'm used to like that kind of diversity. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and I really love this scene too, because like Hillary gets to be a big sister in this intro, and she's like absolutely adorable. I think they're finally finding their footing with the kids as characters. Like Carlton still has a little bit of a ways to go, but like Hillary and Ashley are there. Like, because Hillary has that like little playfulness with her younger sister, and like reverse pranking them. The only problem I have with that scene is that in a real sleepover, Ashley would sleep in her own bed at her own slumber party, or at least that was the rule I had with my slumber parties when I was a kid. So Ashley asks Will before he leaves to tell them a scary story. And Will begins to tell the tale of his first day at BelAir Academy. The way this episode is framed is like it's framed as him telling a scary story about his first day at BelAir Academy. But I imagine that this episode probably was originally written for earlier in the season, because it just seems that way. Because in the poetry episode, we're already at BelAir Academy, and we already know that it's a boys only school. So I imagine this episode, I couldn't find any notes about it being like originally supposed to air earlier, but it just felt that way, if that made sense. No,
I really do think it. I think, well, one, so some of the key hallmarks, this is probably the second episode that was shot, is Uncle Phil's mustache, which is always weird to me now. Like, that weird pencil thin mustache is just like, it's so not Uncle Phil, but he also, his hair is a lot darker. So there's a lot more black in his hair, before, like, as we go, it becomes like more gray or white. So you definitely get that. And like you said, there's a lot of stuff that we already know, like the reverse jacket, Will's meeting the English teacher that we've talked about previously, the one who's like too with it,
too woke, tries too hard. Yeah.
Right. Well, we've already met these characters, so yeah, it really does feel like this is definitely like something that's already has happened.
But I love we get to see the students of BelAir Academy, particularly Chad, who is played by Michael Landis, who was the original Jimmy Olsen in the TV show Lois and Clark. He was one of the lead characters in Final Destination 2, and he played the super cute American chef Danny that Miranda ends up crushing on in one episode of the BBC show Miranda. Totally cute. Like, he is adorable. So I'm like, when I saw him, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Danny from Miranda. So I was very happy to see him because I think he's adorable. But he's so tanned in this show. It was creeping me out because I'm like, it just looked terrible. But yeah, like, we get to meet a few of the other students, such as Kellogg Lieberbaum or Cornflake, which I really love that. Like, I love that name. He ends up becoming a more he becomes his own character throughout the show,
right,
until the kids graduate. But I just love him. And we get to meet Will's first evil teacher, the evil Dr. Bloat, who is played by James Tolkan. I can never pronounce his name properly. But he played Strickland in Back to the Future. And I was surprised to find out he had a small role in one of my other favorite movies, Dick Tracy, where he played Numbers. He's seen briefly during big boys huge conference of all the bigwigs in town. So I was like, I was looking him up for this episode, and I'm like, oh, like just looking up all the movies he had been in that I had seen and not really recognized him in, because everybody knows him from Back to the Future. So
yes, it was such a really good job of just doing that. I loved Will's reveal. Like, he's like, wait, this isn't a co-ed school? What? Like, it's such a weird thing. So I've never gone to like an all gendered school, right? Like I've never, like the closest I did is like I did a military college we've talked about before. And we weren't gendered per se, but like how our barracks were split up we're basically all gendered. Like even though we were split into different companies, all the women had all female barracks, and then the males had each different barracks. So we were split up that way. But I've never just been to a school where it's just been all one way or the other. So that's always been very weird to me. Just because, like I said, I've been around women in school. So going to an all guys school seems like very different. Like, I don't know, like, there's just a lot of stuff I don't know, like, how do you meet girls at this age? Like, I know we talked about like the malls and stuff, but like it seems like it would be counterproductive, just like being a student at that age. And like maybe this is something why like people in positions of power have such like high like internalized misogyny, right? Without me trying to become all wordy, it's just like, if you're at a school where it's just all dudes, of course, why would you ever think about what women think? Because you're at a school for all dudes. All you know throughout your life, all you interacted with is dudes. It's the same reason why people who like all they interact with is like white people or a certain race have like they have just internalized racism, because you just don't know. Like, you have no way of knowing. So I always thought that was very, very weird. But yeah, so that was my way of saying that I don't know what I was trying to say.
Well, one of the things, too, is that's obvious really quickly is that there are no women teachers. Like, until we get Aunt Viv teaching the Black History class in about, like, 2 or 3 episodes, we don't see any female teachers. And one of the things, too, that I was really, like, I had never been to a completely gendered school. Like, the closest I probably would have been when we played sports. Like, we'd go to meets as a girls' team, and we would have these types of sleepovers because, like, we couldn't afford hotel rooms. So what teams would do would just stay overnight in classrooms. And so when we did that, we would have, one time we dared our friend to run around the snow outside in her PJs. And like, we were staying up till 1 a.m, just like messing around. And like, that's the closest I think I could have gotten to like a gendered thing. Cause like, there was no boys allowed basically, but it was just like, I could not imagine going to an all girls school. Like, that creeps me out in a way, because it's like so porno-y, if that makes sense.
Well, again, that's where the internalized like misogyny of just a life is like, an all dude school is just like, hey, it's just all dudes. An all girl school is, what are they going to do there? I mean, there's so many girls. Like,
oh, but like, I did like the reaction that Will had to reading the motto of the school on the door, where he comes in with Uncle Phil, and he reads arrive as boys, leave as men. How long do they want to keep us here? I just love his reaction to everything that he's going through, because I imagine this is like a big, like, it would be a big deal to anybody, like, to imagine going from a gendered public school, like a non-gendered public school, to a gendered private school would probably be like crazy. Like, I would not like to wear uniforms. That would be a big thing.
Oh, did you not have to wear uniforms?
I did not have to wear uniforms at my school.
Oh, I did when I moved to Alabama. But they weren't like, I don't know how to say it. They weren't like the uniforms like a suit and tie, but we did have to wear, when I was in high school in Alabama, we had to wear blue or white collared polo shirts with khaki or blue pants and brown shoes. Mm-hmm. So you had to wear that every day. I'm very weird. I love like I like to dress up. I actually actively. I think someone did a tweet today where it's like there's a duality of Virgos. You either are dressed up like John Wick or you look like Adam Sandler wearing a t-shirt and gym shorts. And I was like, damn, I'm really called out because that's true. Like I love wearing just gym shorts and a t-shirt, but I also really like dressing up. But like, I don't know, it was really cool to be at a not cool. It was really like freeing for me, like just to be like, oh hey, I have to wear these shirts, so I'm going to iron these 5 shirts. And then I'm just going to hang them up, and I don't have to worry about what I'm going to wear, this year.
Well, I think that would have been, like, something that would have, like, I think that would have dealt with some of the inequities in terms of, like, wearing a specific type of shoe or a specific type of shirt to school. Because, like, I remember people used to make big deals about wearing knockoff Adidas, like, clothing and stuff like that. Like, which is stupid because we were all poor. So, like, unless you were stealing, you weren't coming by those clothes, like, naturally. And so I remember people used to make a big deal that if your tearaway pants had 2 lines instead of 3, you were like a cheap bastard. So I think if I had to wear a uniform, I would have been okay with it because, yeah, like you don't have that inequity. But again, like a uniform is the calling card of a specific type of class. You know what I mean? Like an upper class person. So it's just like, I kind of find it weird. So it's like, it is bizarre. Like I did want to attend an all-girls school in Winnipeg when I was growing up, but I didn't ultimately get to go because like I had no one to live with when I was here, and they had uniforms like the classic like Celtic skirt type stuff. And I'm like, man, it would have been cool to wear that. I would have been like, just like, punking it out and stuff. And then I realized, like, no, they would have like shut that shit down so fast. like I doubt Will would have been allowed to turn his jacket inside out like that. I don't know how strict they were about the rules, but I think he just like was able to genie his way around. Like, well, it says you have to wear a jacket, but it doesn't say how. And yeah, like I imagine they changed a lot of the rules for Will, or like they changed a lot of the rule books after Will made these points.
Yeah, well, it's weird. Like I also, like I said, I went to that military college where we had to wear a uniform, and one of the things we had to wear BDUs, which are like have you ever seen like the military wear, like with the green and yellow like camouflage, like the older military wear? Those are BDUs, right? So we'd have to wear BDUs on Tuesdays, but I was a lot larger at the time, so I couldn't really fit into BDUs because they didn't really. Because by that time they had transitioned the Army into ACUs. So ACUs are more your digital camo. So like the ones you see now, where it's like a lot of tan and like a pale teal.
Yeah, it's kind of like those square ones, like those square camo prints, like what do they call them? Like like the ones that look like they're little art, like bit art. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Yeah, those ones. Is that those the ones or different ones?
It's kind of those ones, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So, but since that's in the actual style now, they had them in bigger sizes, so. I remember, so everyone would be wearing BDUs. I wouldn't. And I remember the commandant of the school, asking me in the chow hall, why aren't you wearing your BDUs? I was like, well, they don't have any. So he actually went and got them to order me ACUs, which, as someone who was not in the military, really pissed off a lot of people who were in the military because they were like, well, how does he get to do that? Because he's in the military. He's not in the military, but we are in the military. We can't wear our ACUs. So then they made it a policy where they allowed people to wear the ACUs. So that was a cool thing that people were upset that I got to do that I didn't really want to. So,
again, we mentioned him earlier, but Mr. Fellows returns again and is even more try-hard than the last time we saw him. And I love how Will goes out of his way to avoid him at later parts of the episode. So, Mr. Fellows feels he has a connection to Will as he, Mr. Fellows, lived in Harlem for 2 weeks back in the 70s and felt it changed him. Like, it's always so bizarre because, like, I've known these types of teachers who feel that because they spent a little bit of time on the res or in Africa or in, like, Asia, they have some sort of lived experience that they can talk to kids about. But I'm like, you were there for, like, I don't act like an expert on Bangladesh because I was there for a month and a half.
Right.
Like, it's just, like, it's so, like, you can't possibly learn what you need to learn about these places in that short a time, dude. But,
right.
Yeah, like, but I think his heart's in the right place. He's just kind of trying a bit too hard to be down.
Yeah, he's a very like a fair weather liberal, right? Like, he's like, oh, I've been around the black people, and he probably was like being in Harlem in the 70s would have been right around like the big black exploitation movement. A lot of, you know, black revolutionaries started there. Like there's just been like a lot of talk about Fred Hampton and stuff like that just recently. Like, I think that would have, like, he would have been able to see a lot of stuff, but like you said, being there and then moving to like Whitesburg of white people, like it's kind of hard. Like, you can't say like, oh yeah, I've been to Harlem, but you were there for like 2 weeks. Like, I was in LA for a week, but I'm not talking about like my love of the LA culture. Like, I was in LA for a week. I don't know shit about LA. I just liked being there. That was really about it.
Yeah, and it's something that I find comes up a lot too with like, I do a lot of well, more so now that COVID's a little bit less of an issue in my province, but I did today I usually do a lot of talks to like teenage artists that are from disadvantaged backgrounds, because I want them to know that art is a career that they can pursue, and art is not just the career of a rich person. Because I'm like, you have lived experience that are just as valuable as these people who pretend to be poor. And so, like, Mr. Fellows reminds me of one of those guys that pretends to be poor because he thinks it gives him some more cred in terms of, like, his poetry writing or his painting. So it's just like, I know this type of guy, and it's like, you can always see the fakeness of their artistic practice, and I'm like, you gotta watch out for these guys because they'll take funding and they don't deserve it. Because it's like, not that like people can't be talented and come from a rich background. It just tends to make it easier for them to get to the point where they can be successful. Right. Like, I always like throw shade at like rich people, but I'm like, yeah, I listen to Taylor Swift and like Lady Gaga, and I'm like, yeah, it's different, but I'm like, yeah, I know, like, they probably still would have been successful even if it would have taken a little bit longer if they had been poor. Yeah, but it's like, those are people we don't have a problem with. Like you said, Lady Gaga she was just talented. It's the same thing with like LinManuel Miranda. Like, yeah, his dad was a politician, so he got to be in a lot of spaces, but he's also a genius. Like, I don't care if you don't like Hamilton, like, some of that stuff is like actually really genius. But then, like, you look at stuff like people like Logan Paul, who doesn't become like a famous YouTuber if his daddy wasn't a fucking a dentist or whatever those Paul's parents are. I don't know. They're way richer than anyone has this, and they could do like really terrible stuff because they're rich. So like, those are the people I agree with you. Like, I have more of a problem with than like someone who's like rich and like is also talented. Yeah. But that tends to, like, they tend to rise above the crop, too, in terms of, like, I just don't like when people act like they come from nothing and are suddenly, like, my talent got me through. Like, Kid Rock grew, like, I remember somebody saying about how he tries to act like he's trailer trash, and I'm like, let me look it up, hold on real quick. I remember somebody on the Laser Time community talked about it, and it's, like, because Eminem grew up hard. Like, he legitimately, like, he didn't come from riches, and so he doesn't try to hide that. But certain people tend to try and act like they're hard when they're not. Let's see, hold on, I'm looking at his... Yeah, Kid Rock, his father owned multiple car dealerships. And his mother Kid Rock's father owned a 6-acre estate and a 5,628 square foot home where Kid Rock grew up, regularly helping his family pick apples and caring for their horses. He's not exactly like trailer trash, and it just drives me nuts when people try to live up to this standard that they think will make them harder. I'm just like, but it's only something that white people tend to do. I find, like, because they wanna be down.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's the to use a really shitty word, but actually use it correctly. It's the oppression Olympics thing.
Yeah,
it's the I'm oppressed. Why shouldn't I be able to do X, Y, and Z? Here's where I've gone through, but like, it also takes away factors of like what actual oppression is, like how races can be disenfranchised. Like, there are white people who've had it worse than I have. I will openly say that. But then we also talk about like how things happen, like just in society, where like, yeah, it can suck, but like society wise, like as a race, you may have more opportunities than I do. I think that's something you have to be cognizant of. Like, I do think like I think more people should be realistic of like where you are in like life and social structure. Like I said, I'm never in any kind of like, I'm privileged as hell. I never had to worry about, am I going to have lunch or dinner, every day. I had parents who were always there with me, but I do know people who don't. And I think being cognizant of that stuff doesn't make you worse. I think it's very important.
Yeah, like, cause to go back to Bangladesh, like, I grew up poor. We did have to share like one box of Kraft dinner amongst 4 people, that sort of thing. But when I went to Bangladesh, like, I finally saw what true poverty without a safety net is, and people begging for change on the streets of Bangladesh. If they didn't get anything, they wouldn't eat that day. And so it was really bizarre to me to experience that, because to a lot of people that I met while I was there, I was considered wealthy because I could travel there. And I'm like, I am not wealthy, but like in the perception of a lot of people who were living in like sandbar islands, I was like a freaking czar. And it felt weird to have to deal with that privilege I didn't know I had. And so, like, it's something I'm trying to be condescending about too, because like I do have a lot of privilege, despite having to deal with racism still. And right. But it's still like something that I think a lot of people try to hide, because it's like, I'm not privileged. I am like just regular Joe Schmo. But I'm like, no, you have certain gifts that have put you above not above, that's the wrong word, but have put you at an advantage. And there's no shame in realizing that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
But it's just like, so Will becomes a quick hit with everyone at school, minus Dr. Bloat and Carlton. And during a break between classes, we see his photo hung with the other illustrious students of the school. And he carves the word fresh into the alumni desk at Bel-Air Academy. As we found out earlier, the alumni desk was an old desk that the first students of Bel-Air Academy signed their names into, or carved their names into, rather. And Will is almost immediately caught when Ashley reveals that fresh is Will's handiwork. So, which was so funny. Like, I was wondering if he was just writing fresh and he got caught, or was he just trying to write fresh? Because I couldn't, like, I was wondering about the picture of him too. Did he put it up there, or was it real, or was he imagining it? I could not remember.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was very important too. Like, this was like, I think one of the first times where they've used prints a lot, but no one's called them fresh. And I think this was an important thing. I think when this show was originally like cast, I think they were going to push more into calling him Fresh Prince more often. And then I think which is actually the wiser decision, to just start calling him Will, or if someone was going to call him, just call him Prince. So that's another reason why I think where we talked about was this an earlier episode that was shot? I think that's more evidence towards that because it was more of like, oh hey, yeah, he's fresh. Like this is the Fresh Prince.
Because I was like, I did like that little joke they had about they had suspects in custody, and like Carlton said that they thought it was a freshman who wrote fresh, then lost his nerve and ran off. So I just love that was the suspects about it. But I love that they're celebrating before Ashley reveals that it was Will's handiwork. I love that Jeffrey's told to bring out champagne for everyone to celebrate Will's good day at school. And for some reason, he brings out champagne for 6 people, even though three of the people there are underage. So I'm like, did he put apple juice in the other 3? Or like, it was just a bizarre scene to me. I'm like, So Will, and one of my favorite scenes in this episode, he has a dream about the desk being analyzed for fingerprints, and Dr. Bloat reveals all the evidence pointed to their, quote, resident hoodlum, Will Smith. And then Dr. Bloat pulls out a shotgun and aims at Will. And I just love Will screaming in horror, because like he just cocks the damn thing and points, and Will screams. Since Back to the Future Part 2 came out the year before, where Strickland uses a shotgun in one scene, I like to think that this was probably a shout out to that scene. Just because it's the same model of gun that I think it is the same model of gun he used in Back to the Future Part 2.
Right.
So, but I totally forgot about this dream scene, and I had to pause the Netflix because I was laughing way too hard. So I just love that he's like our resident hoodlum, William Smith, and he pulls out the gun. So also one of my favorite scenes is I was about to call him Strickland. Dr. Bloat stresses that he's disappointed that no one has come forward to confess to carving up the desk, and he encourages everyone to look deep into their hearts, and if they know anything to please like tell somebody. And Carlton almost immediately sells out Will. So he just stands up and points, and you see one of the guys sitting in front of Will, who has his tie slightly loosened, almost immediately start tightening the tie so he looks a little bit proper. So the little scenes in this show, the little bits in this show are just killing me. Like, I just love the little comedy that's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely really good.
Yeah, and I think Carlton pointing and selling out Will is one of the first times we see Carlton as Carlton. Like, I think that was a total Carlton thing. So it's finding its legs. I really like that.
Yeah.
So there's a tribunal to decide Will's fate, where Mr. Fellows talks on Will's behalf and says that, starts stressing that Will doesn't even really live in the world of Bel-Air. And one of my favorite lines, he's like, he comes from a place where the word bad means good. I love that there's this GLaDOS report about how Will doesn't really understand the concept of their rules. And I'm like, he's not a child. Just learned English yesterday. Like, right. He knows what he did. So it's just really funny to me. I just love that. And I love that Will has made such an impression on the other students and it's what saves him. Particularly Cornflake, who speaks up and says he will leave the school with his dad's money if Will is expelled. Because Carlton just wants him on probation. And like he can't take part in any of the after school clubs or anything, but the school wants to expel him. And like I don't know, like, do you think it was an expel worthy offense?
No, I also think it's not even a suspension or probation worthy offense. I think it's like I'm so like, especially where we're at in society now. I think corporal punishment to an nth degree, like, is not helpful for anybody. I also think expulsion wouldn't have been helpful to Will. But like, I don't know. Like, to me, honestly, this would be something like a suspension, or not even a suspension, like an attention thing. Like it's just like graffiti, kind of. And I just remember I'd gotten in trouble in my senior year or junior year in high school because I was messing with someone's yearbook and I accidentally like chipped their nameplate and somebody wrote my name on top of it. Yeah, and it was a whole thing, but like I didn't get suspended or I just got like a reprimand and I think we had to buy the kid a new book. Mm-hmm. And that was really about it.
Well, and I don't understand getting expelled from a school you're paying to go to. Like I would not like I imagine like they would not want to expel a paying student. Like it's just bizarre to me. Like maybe they would expel him and keep the tuition. Like maybe it's a part of the contract they signed to attend the school. But it was just like weird to me because I'm like, you can't expel me. I paid to be here.
Right.
And the fact that they can repair the desk. Like it's not like he defaced it so badly that they cannot repair it.
Right.
And so I'm like, it was kind of like, why do they have this tribunal? Like, why are they putting it? Like, it felt kind of bizarre because, and it kind of had like a subtext too because Will is black. And
that's
so
the thing as well. Like, especially like you said, with everything going on now, that's the thing right now. I'm just like, oh, this does not read like I think they think it reads.
Yeah, because I'm like, especially with Mr. Fellows going and saying like he does not understand our world, and I'm like, well, what world is that? Like he is pretty smart. He is, but he just doesn't understand like he came from a public school, so maybe he doesn't understand the concept of like a private school and the way you behave, but he knew what he was doing when he carved his name into that desk. Like he even says like, I wanted the school to remember me and remember my time here. And I'm like, yeah, like when I wrote in books, like I just want to, like I wrote in textbooks back home because like somebody in like grade 12 4 years before me had done the same. And like I wanted the kids in grade 12 4 years down the line from me to see my name and like that sort of thing. It's like it's a legacy. But yeah, like I just love that the kids know how best to get their way by threatening to take their money with them. Like, oh my god, it's just it's one of my favorite types of guerrilla warfare. Like nobody once you start messing with people's money, that's when they start to fold really fast. That's one of my favorite things to do is just like, I'm taking my money elsewhere. So, it's one of my favorite things. But yeah, I love that it's Cornflake that leads them in saying like, if you expel Will, we leave too. And I'm like, oh, that's really sweet. And so I think it's like, I think the friendships he develops like are sincere. And I just like that. Like the idea of like the fun he injects into the school.
Yeah. No,
it's just really cute.
He I mean, this is the reason why people do push for diversity because he is a personality that you're not used to interacting with. I think that's important for them.
Yeah, especially when we see later with the Black History episode, like it's Cornflake who backs them up when they ask for the Black History course to be taught by a black professor. And it's like, I know that they're like, Will just did it initially because he thought it'd be an easy grade, but I think it was really cool that Cornflake is not doing this as lip service, like whereas some of the other guys at BelAir Academy seem to, like the guy who adjusted his tie when Will got in trouble. Cornflake was willing to stick up for Will, and I'm like, no, like he's really ride or die. I love that character.
Right.
But so, man, we went through this episode really fast. So, like, we're back at home, and Will, not listening to Phil when he's telling him, like, the stop monologue, where he's like, if you feel like doing something ever again at school, stop, do nothing. And so Will's like, oh, I'm sorry, Uncle Phil, were you saying something? And Vivian has to hold Phil back from beating the crap out of Will.
Right.
I just love that little line too where she's like, good night, honey, lock your door. So, and Jeffrey getting his revenge on Will when he finds out that Will has to do kitchen duty to make up for vandalizing the desk. So this comes into play because earlier in the episode, Will made Jeffrey fetch him pate. Mm-hmm. And it seems like Jeffrey also has a schedule to follow in terms of getting Will a snack at a specific time. So I love when Jeffrey gets to be evil. Like there's that whole, he's just like laughing ridiculingly off screen when he finds out that Will's going to be having to get his hands dirty. So it's pretty cute. I like this episode a lot.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think I agree with you. Like originally I thought it was a little bit of a sillier episode. I was like, oh, it feels really weird trying to go back to this episode. Like, and like even the character dynamics are a little bit off from what they usually are. Like now, even like in the show, but I don't know. Having rewatched a little bit more into the series and then rewatched this episode for our episode that we're doing now, I also really liked it a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Like just because I totally forgot about that Dr. Bloat scene with the gun. I totally forgot about the scene where Phil tells him like this really sweet message about like just don't do anything anymore. And Will being a total kid and ignoring it. And I just love the relationship that because I did not expect to like Kellogg, like Cornflake. I did not expect to like him because I thought he was just like a hanger-on and like just a joke character. But he actually legitimately is a friend of Will. And like just some of the little acting choices they make for him is just really sweet. Like, 'cause how many people would stand up for Will, like in this context? Like he's barely known him a day, and he's willing to be like, I'm gonna tell my dad to take me out of the school. And I just thought it was pretty cool. Like I'm probably putting too much backstory into Cornflake as a character, but I like that he was willing to put himself in Will's way, and I love that. Like it's so cool to me. I just love that little thing. But
no, it was definitely. It's fun characters that we kind of get to see the start of, and I think that's really fun.
Yeah, and the episode officially ends with Will finally telling the girls of the Wilbert Smithsonian horror story, which the girls immediately know it was about him. And so it ends with a really cute pillow fight between Ashley's slumber party. So I thought it was adorable. Like I like the way Will interacts with Ashley. Like I think his relationship with her is one of my favorite parts of the show.
Yeah, no, I think like she is such a good like foil to him, and I think it's been really important to have her as a character on there.
Yeah, and I love how innocent she was when she knew immediately what fresh meant. And she didn't do it. Whereas last episode, Hillary was being a little bit more malicious in her tattletaling. Like Ashley did not mean to do that. Where she was like, she just said it directly. Like, didn't she say they call you the Fresh Prince? And I just like love that because it's like she didn't do it on purpose. She'll probably be apologizing to him later, but I'm like, that is such a little sister thing to do. Like I think a lot of the people who write for the show probably have siblings, because some of the ways they write siblings is just like, especially when we get to Aunt Viv's sisters later in the series. I just love the way they're written because they're all fleshed out and they're all like they have this lived history, and I just really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a really great thing. I think it's very important to show families as families, and they do such a good job of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Especially, I was just realizing too that Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv paid for Will to go to Bel-Air Academy, and I'm like, did Vi ask for that? Did they just do it because they wanted Will to have a better education? Like, is this something that Vi and Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv agreed upon when he moved there? Like, because I think it's just some, like the more we go into the show, the more I realize, like, how much people put into making sure that Will had a good start. Right. And, like, maybe it's because I'm an adult, but maybe because I am an adult now, And I can see, like, there's this background, a lot of info that you don't really realize when you're a teenager. The fact that they had to fly him out there, the fact that he probably was only going to be there for a year. Like, it just, like, there's a lot of rich backstory in this show that I can see now. And it's just really fascinating to go back to it and explore it as an older watcher. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's such a really good episode, and like I said, we're in our 30s now, like, so it's easier to look at these things and be like, oh yeah, you kid, here's a smart thing for you to do. I don't know, it also is really weird just because, like, it's also a 30-year-old show, right? Like, so
yeah.
it's like, yeah, like when I was that age, I wouldn't think, but then also just as we get more into the episodes, we'll see more of, like, attitudes that are also feels outdated, not just because of age, but because of just the time. And this is why, like, doing these rewatch shows are really great and really fun to do, because it gives us a chance to kind of, like, look at that stuff, and I think also, like, smartly look at it. And I think that's the thing that's underrated when we do shows like this, or when anyone does shows like this. It allows us not only just to recap what we watched, but then contextualize what they go into and, like, how we can interpret those and look at those things. So I think that's one of the cool things about doing a show like this. And I think this has been really great about doing this show.
Well, and yeah, too, and knowing, like, when I first saw this show, I was, like I've said it before, that I identified with the kids. And now that I'm watching it in my 30s, I'm identifying with Uncle Phil more and realizing where he's coming from and how he sees Will. Like, I think it's probably just because of our lived experiences being so different now. But I just see, like, I can imagine Will being one of the kids I talk to in the workshops I do, and just seeing all this potential and all this intelligence, just being allowed to grow in a positive environment. And Will kind of being hesitant because he does not want to be bougie, or he does not want to be someone he doesn't think he is.
Right.
And I like that this show is mostly about him realizing that this is who he is. And just because he's not growing up hard in Philly does not mean that he is anything less than a person. Like, he is still intelligent and valuable, and he's going to grow up to do great things because of the head start his family has given him. And I really love that idea of how important family is in this show. It is such a positive thing, because, like, I know we see a lot of Uncle Phil getting mad at Will, but, like, later in this season even too, we see Phil take Will under his wing, and it's just, like, so good. Like, I can't wait to watch more of it now.
Yeah. No, definitely. I was just thinking, 'cause, like, I literally just did that. I just, like, put on episodes and just kept on rolling. Like, I watched this episode and I was like, well, what if I just watch a lot more? So I don't know.
Like, we get to the Black History one soon, and I just love that episode, because it's like it just deals with the idea of, like, when you're a kid, you think you know everything. You think you know, you are the first person to have ever read Malcolm X and understood exactly what he said.
Right.
And I love that line that Vivian tells him, that if you don't know the whole history, you're trivializing the struggle. And I just love that idea, of no, you have to know everything, or you won't know the whole story. You have to know why Malcolm X did this in the context of the world he lived in. So I just love that. Like, it's such a smart show, and I don't think it gets enough credit for that.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's very important right now as well. Especially as we see a lot of Black leaders, and as we see a lot of people kind of having conversations about race. I think I'll wait for that episode, but I do think it's a very important conversation to have.
Yeah, that's going to be our 4-hour episode.
Another one of our 4.
Yeah, with our special guest, Black historian Chris Antista.
I'm sure he would do it, but that's another episode for another day. But we do want to thank you guys so much for listening to this episode live from the Poolhouse. Sonya, do you have anything that you want to promote?
Just check out my Twitter, honey_child. I have appeared on 2 virtual cons, SoulCon Summer Series and San Diego Comic-Con. Both were about Indigenous media representation. The SoulCon one will probably be online a lot longer than the San Diego Comic-Con one, so it's probably still out by the time this episode airs. But yeah, look into what am I doing in the next few days. Go buy my book Carrie Berry Lynn on the Friesen bookstore website or Amazon, whichever one's easiest for you. And also buy the anthology Women Love Wrestling, available at Amazon. All the proceeds go towards women's charities in the US and the UK. And my story in that one is about when I met Edge from WWE when I was 6 years old. It's a really interesting story. Mick Foley really liked it, so he loves all the good stuff.
You can follow me wherever you want to follow me at. I'm on Twitter at Travis L. Foster. Don't follow me on Instagram. Me and Sonya had a very long conversation about this. My Instagram is blocked. You will only be allowed in if I want you to be in. That's how I feel about Instagram. If you want me unfiltered, you can find me on Twitter. I do a lot of podcasts. But I was just recently on a podcast called Ultra 64. We talked about they do a podcast where they talk about and rank all of the Nintendo 64 video games. And we talked about the Pokemon Stadium games, which I love a lot. So that was definitely very fun. And I don't have to remind you guys about my rom-com. I'm going to stop talking about it because I've done the thing where it means it's actually in process. I started a Google Doc and also reached out to somebody to co-write it with me. So I have a name. I don't want to give the name because I think it's a really good name. So if I don't end up using that name, I don't want you guys to steal it. But I have the Google Doc ready. I have the outline started. So we are officially in full-on production or pre-production mode in writing my first feature film. So,
oh, congrats!
Thank you. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if it even becomes anything, because I don't know how to fund anything. And that's going to be the fun part of doing all of that. So, for Sonya, my name is T.L. Foster. This has been Live from the Poolhouse. Don't get thrown out like jazz.